and welcome to ECCB Connects, a program produced by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank to share with you who we are, what we do, and how we serve you. What is the ECCB doing to address the fees and charges that you are required to pay at commercial banks? How is the bank assisting its member governments with the issue of renewable energy? We get the answers to these two important questions on this week's program. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
When the ECCB took the bold step to introduce Dcash, the people of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union were at the heart of this decision.
It's about creating opportunities.
It's about connecting family.
It's about linking friends.
It's about changing the way we do business.
It's about transforming lives.
A journey to a place where none have gone before will not be without its challenges.
But challenges will not deter us from our goal. It's about me.
It's about you.
It's about all of us.
So join us and let's make history together.
Thanks for staying connected. In his engagement with the media in Saint Lucia during his recent country outreach mission to that country, Governor Timothy N. Antoine discussed the steps the ECCB is taking to help to control or guide commercial banks regarding fees and charges that they require customers to pay. Governor Antoine explained that the ECCB can only act as much as the law allows it to, and he, along with the Chief Director Policy, disclosed the measures the ECCB is putting in place to address the matter.
Under the Banking Act, which is what the banks are regulated, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank does not regulate fees and charges. The law does not provide for that. So it's not as if, it's not in the law, right? So we can't implement something that's not in the law. I want to start with that. That is what we call market conduct, the relationship between financial institutions, for example banks, and their customers. In law, ECCB is tasked with regulating banks in terms of financial stability. And the most important thing that we have to do for you is to make sure depositors' funds are safe. That's what the focus of our regulation is about. Now, having said that, we fully agree that market conduct is an important issue. And there is work that we are now undertaking in respect to that. And perhaps if I can ask the Chief Director to say a word on what we're doing to address the market conduct issue. But just to be very clear, there's nothing in the law. So just to put a bow on it. So now when a financial institution wants to address their fees and charges, the only thing the law allows us to do is to ask them to submit the fees, ask them why, and ask them whether they have given sufficient notice. And adequate notice means at least 30 days to their customers before they bring the new fees in. We cannot say, no, you can't charge it. We can't even say yes. All we have is a monitoring role and a disclosure or transparency role. We have to insist and they have to show evidence that they have published and given notice. That's what the law gives us. Okay? So clearly, that is an issue that we are now addressing.
What we hope to achieve is an independent piece of legislation that addresses conduct of financial institutions, not only commercial banks, but other financial institutions within the financial space that allows for some level of consumer protection. It would allow for us being an ability to assess whether fees and charges are consistent with the service that's being provided and all of that. So that would be an addition to the suite of legislation that we currently have in the financial sector. So that's what we hope to accomplish. Have an independent bill that addresses that. It would be uniform, so it would be across the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union in all 8 jurisdictions. So we hope we could have that. And we would have, of course, a conduct authority represented by a financial ombudsman, and we hope that this could be a central bank, which would be the Conduct Authority, with support in country, in each of the countries. So it's a hub and spokes model, not fully developed, but that's this is the initial thinking, the initial approach to the issue of market contracts.
Right. Thank you very much, Chief Director. So, I mean, in sum, we are definitely working on the issue. We can't do what the law does not currently allow us to do, but we plan to propose a law to our governments to help address this issue. And that's what the Chief Director just spoke to.
The governor and the senior economist, Beverly Lugay, also addressed the matter of renewable energy and whether the ECCB, based on its own successful greening initiative, was providing guidance and subsidies to member governments.
This slide shows that the installed capacity for renewables among the ECC countries. Currently, for Saint Lucia, the installed capacity is 4 megawatts, and your total capacity is about 88 megawatts, so you're just about 5%. Across the ECCU, at the regional level, the ECCU is about 10%. So there's a lot of scope to increase renewable energy in Saint Lucia. I know that when I read through Lucilec's financial report, I know that they indicated that by the end of 2023, they should install an additional 7.5 megawatts. I know also that they intend to purchase some batteries for the Viewport solar plant. So incrementally, hopefully by the next 10 years, the target will be met. The target is currently 35% by 2030, I believe. So they're making progress, but it's still very slow. And the current situation that we're facing now with the global increase in fuel prices, it should motivate the region, not just Saint Lucia, but it should motivate the region to really speed up, that transition to renewable energy. So we're hoping that our current situation forces us to really speed up our progress towards renewable energy.
Yes, that's the ambition we have to really triple in the next 5 years and then hit some of these targets that Beverly just mentioned. Now you asked a question, aren't we sort of slowing down our progress, retarding our progress by some of the decisions we're making? I think we have to take a nuanced approach to this. The reality is that we are seeing unprecedented inflation, and it's hardest on the most vulnerable households. Inflation is a tax on the poor. We all feel it, but it is a particularly pernicious tax on the poor. So in this moment, the government has to help protect the vulnerable. In this moment. So these measures are short term, they're temporary. But the problem is that we don't know for how long right now, because we do not know when the war in Ukraine, for example, will end, and the related sanctions will be rolled back. So I think right now the governments have to do what they're doing. But you raise a very important issue, and in fact it came up yesterday because carbon pricing is part of how we address this question of net zero targets. But we make the point that is particularly important in the largest emitters. So the countries that are with the largest emissions are the ones who have to lead on carbon pricing. We do have carbon pricing in the ECCU. We have fuel taxes. Now you could argue whether the right calibrated, the magnitude, whether we have the right piece on gasoline as opposed to diesel. Obviously, the dirtier the fuel, the higher the tax should be. That's the economic argument and the ethical argument. But certainly, in this moment, this is an emergency where we're trying to push on.
With respect to, the architecture across the Eastern Caribbean, and especially in the field of energy, we've seen some attempts being made with ESERA, Eastern Caribbean Energy Regulatory Authority. That didn't happen. Given this new push or the clear need for a push towards renewables, do you think that we're going to see some, OECS-wide approach towards dealing with renewable energy?
Yes, there are some efforts on the way at the OECS level. I know there's a solar project, I don't remember the name of it now, Solar Challenge, smaller solar PV applications on rooftops and so on. So on the screen you will see something called the establishment of a renewable energy infrastructure investment facility. Thank you, Beverly. And basically what we want to do here, working with the World Bank and others, is an attempt to essentially have a facility that addresses both two things. One, any policy and regulatory gaps. So you mentioned ECCB. I remember that. I was part of that. I was PS Finance Energy at the time. We weren't able to get that one done. That would be to set up a regional energy regulator. That was the aim. We weren't able to do it. Saint Lucia and Grenada were working together very closely on that. But there are some policy and regulatory gaps. So for example, if somebody wants to be an independent power producer in renewables, you have to know, one, do you have the permission to do? Secondly, what tariff are you going to sell your excess energy to the grid? What price are you going to receive? That has to be clear. If you're not clear on that, you're not going to invest, because you have to know what your payback period is going to be. You have to be able to negotiate with a financial institution. You have to have clarity around that. The reality is that in some of our countries, that framework needs improvement, significant improvement. And so that facility that I mentioned is intended to help sort out any of the policy and regulatory gaps, standards and others, and then financing. Because we could do all of the regulatory and policy work. If we don't have financing to actually do investments in renewables, renewables are not cheap. The prices have come down. Of course, now with the supply chain disruption, some prices have gone up. But prices have trended downward over the years. But you have to have the requisite financing to be able to actually make the investment. And so we are seeking to mobilize resources on behalf of our member country to try to get a focus on that. I know the recent Summit of the Americas, the United States, President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris made certain commitments to the region in respect of renewables. We have to ensure that these commitments are met. I know the Caribbean Development Bank is also looking at some possibilities in terms of how we can help to speed up. So there are some initiatives on the way, because the frustrating thing about it is that we have heard of climate funds and the availability of grants and soft resources, but we are not accessing those resources. The Caribbean is not accessing those resources. We've heard of green bonds, but when you look at green bonds are not being issued in the Caribbean. Mexico, Brazil, maybe Argentina. So that's Latin America, not in the Caribbean. We have to change that. So there is a big effort on the way to try to mobilize resources. Because let's face it, not even the multilateral development banks by themselves can meet the funding challenge, the infrastructure deficit that needs to be filled. You do need the private sector to be part of the solution. And so an engagement with the private sector. This facility, and I will end with that, we're looking at tapping resources from climate funds, like the Green Climate Fund, the Adaptation Fund, the GEF, Global Environmental Facility. We're looking to tap resources from the multilateral development banks, like the World Bank, like the Caribbean Development Bank, and others. We're looking to tap resources from the Eastern Caribbean Securities Market. There's excess liquidity in the system. We believe that there are possibilities there, and possibly maybe even a small contribution from the central bank.
And now for this week's financial tip.
Always write down the grocery list before you go shopping, and make sure you stick to it. This will stop you from impulse buying and could save you hundreds of dollars each year.
Here's where we end this episode of ECCB Connects. We heard that 1. The current banking laws do not empower the ECCB to regulate commercial banks' fees and charges. 2. The ECCB is working on a proposed framework that would help to protect you as you conduct business with financial institutions. This includes protection of your confidential information and the regulation of fees and charges. And 3. The ECCB is partnering with the World Bank and other agencies to secure funding for greening initiatives in the ECCU. This move will help to reduce the cost of electricity to you, the citizens and residents. Thank you for watching, and remember to connect with us next week for another program.